Hello there, and welcome to the House of Hammer. So, we're all back together again. One big happy family. It's kind of like the last days of our summer school holidays. Ben and Kev are outside having a spirited game of badminton. At least I think they are, unless screaming things about shuttlecocks is some kind of modern insult. Adam is making up for lost time with our Ingrid. She made her feelings quite clear by doing a piddle on his socks. And yours truly is here, with you lovely lot, to take you through to our next room, Hammer's 1959 post-war thriller, 10 Seconds to Hell. Originally to have been titled The Phoenix after the 1955 novel by Lawrence P. Bachman upon which it is based, 10 Seconds to Hell began production in Berlin on the 24th of February 1958. A co-production with American firm 7 Arts, 10 Seconds to Hell is notable as 7 Arts' silent partner was Elliot Hyman, who had already invested in a number of Hammer films, amongst them The Curse of Frankenstein. Not only that, it also carried the weight of some serious Hollywood star power, most notably Jack Palance and Jeff Chandler. This would prove to be the only appearances from these acting heavyweights in a Hammer picture. Palance's star continued to rise, while tragically Jeff Chandler sadly passed away just a couple of years later, on the 17th of June 1961. He was just 42 years old. It did get us thinking, though. We really have encountered some wonderful one-off stars in our journey through the House of Hammer, haven't we? Well, to delve a little deeper, it's the most unique one-off you could ever wish to meet, Mr. Kev Moore.
If you've heard any of our recent episodes, you'll know that Smokey's started having a little look at the cast lists in each film we cover. After all, it's well known that to keep things moving as fast as possible, Hammer would often work with the same people, because sticking to known quantities makes for a sound business plan. On the other hand, 10 Seconds to Hell provides very slim pickings, as you'll hear later on, which gives me a chance to highlight the fly-by-nights, the one-hit wonders, or the splashes in the pan. And while the list is quite a long one, there's the odd, illustrious names that crop up. As an aside, out of the entire cast and crew of 10 Seconds to Hell, there's a lovely coincidence that it only contains 10 people that worked on more than this particular project with Hammer. This probably goes some way to explaining why it feels the least like a Hammer film, and that includes Sporting Love. It's time to remember that Bela Lugosi and Paul Robeson got the ball rolling for all of us, and both can easily be considered legendary. Elizabeth Scott added a touch of Hollywood glamour during the Brit Noir phase the studio went through that's rich pickings for the one-offs in front and behind the cameras. There's the clown prince of crime, Cesar Romero, the glamour puss, Hilary Brooke, and Tom Conway as Tom Conway? They're the obvious ones that immediately spring to most people's minds, but then, while I'm on the subject of noir, director Ken Hughes visited for The House Across the Lake before moving on to direct one of my all-time favourites, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Right, moving on down the list, we've got Dean Jagger, who'd seen the spooky phase with X the Unknown, then thanks to some misguided maritime mirth, we were treated to Peter Sellers as a distinctly odd Irishman. Then a quick peep further down it has Fanatic throwing up a couple of noteworthy names, Tallulah Bankhead and Donald Sutherland, whilst Joan Fontaine's appearance in The Witches would be her first Hammer and would also be her final feature film. But why, oh why, does it feel like Raquel Welch made more than one Hammer film? The list is dizzying to say the least, and even sees an appearance from Elvis Presley's granddaughter. But for the most part, our favourite studio did stick with its favourite people, and here's hoping that Smokey keeps his peepers peeled while he's guarding the revolving doors for them. As 10 seconds to hell is such a weird blip on the radar though, it was worth raising the flag, and it's been fun digging through the piles of papers here in the vault and noting that for every Michael Ripper there's an Elliot Gould, every Christopher Lee an Angela Lansbury, and every Peter Cushing there's a Sybil Shepherd. And give yourself a bonus pint if you spot the links there.
Never fear, Kevy. If there's one thing I'm famous for, it's for peeling my peepers. Wonderful stuff, as always. Now, 10 Seconds to Hell tells the story of a group of 6 members of a German bomb disposal team, recruited after the end of the war, to do a bit of explosive spring cleaning around Berlin. A full synopsis will be along shortly. But let's face it, when you hear bomb disposal, you want to hear 2 things. 1, tales of bravery, and 2, how do you actually dispose of those things? Well, to bring us the former, and with the story of a truly remarkable dynasty, it's our historic hero, Mr. Adam Roach.
Let me tell you a story all about the Holy Trinity. That sound you hear are all the atheists skipping ahead to Kev's section about Cherry Bomb by the Runaways. For those of you still here, though, I'm not about to whip out my Bible and deliver a sermon. I'm going to take you back to a most remarkable modern dynasty that began when Henry Howard, the 19th Earl of Suffolk, took as his wife Margaret Leiter, an American heiress known throughout the world as one of society's famous dollar princesses, and whose sister, Mary Leiter, would go on to become the famed Lady Curzon, the inspiration behind Downton Abbey, and who also inspired Lady Curzon Soup, a broth made of curried turtle meat. Yummy. Anyway, we're more interested in the offspring of Henry and Margaret, Charles Henry George Howard. The 20th Earl of Suffolk and 13th Earl of Berkshire began life as a bit of a wild one. In fact, those were the very words used to describe him by his superiors in the Scots Guard, who took the unusual step of requesting that he resign from his service with them due to these wild ways. So instead, Charles Howard decided to see if his wild ways could be put to better use in medicine. Off to the University of Edinburgh he travelled, but instead of wildness, Charles found an aptitude for the intricacies of study and analysis and applied himself. 3 years later, he graduated with a first-class honours degree in chemistry and pharmacology and was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society there. It was then that Oxford University got in touch to offer this most distinguished wild child a research post in the somewhat bewildering area of explosives and poisons. By the time World War II arrived, Charles Howard had developed something of a reputation as a man addicted to risk. As a decorated medical man and Earl of England, he was naturally made an officer and took on missions that always seemed to place him directly in the course of danger. Remarkably, Charles always insisted on taking along with him wherever he went his private secretary, Eileen Beryl Morden, a 27-year-old raven-haired beauty with a natural flair for problem-solving. Even more remarkably, Eileen seemed to be just as much of a risk-taker as her boss. When the British government contacted Charles to see if he could possibly acquire a rare chemical element known as heavy water, a specific type of water containing no hydrogen isotopes and invaluable in the researching of atomic development, Charles and Eileen sped speedily to Norway, where they procured a vast amount of heavy water before spiriting it back to Britain through France. On the way, they also discovered that the managing director of the Antwerp Diamond Bank was in possession of £10 million worth of gem diamonds. His location was discovered, the diamonds were seized and added to the heavy water shipment. Oh, and for good measure, they also stole 600 tons of machine guns waiting on a French quay, bringing their considerable haul back to a delighted, waiting British government. As if these deeds weren't enough, Charles and Eileen then decided to branch out into bomb disposal along with Charles' chauffeur, Fred Hards. A call would come in from an anxious air raid warden, reporting on the presence of a nefarious explosive somewhere in the vicinity. Eileen and Charles would leap into Fred's car, and together they would speed away like some well-to-do team of superheroes, whereupon Eileen would whip out her notebook and carefully document the procedure, while Charles and Fred would together handle the defusing of the bomb itself. So famous did this plucky trio become that they soon earned the nickname the Holy Trinity. Time and again, the valiant threesome arrived on the scene, notebook in hand, and removed the danger ticking beneath the feet of a breathless public. The notes taken by Eileen would not just describe in detail the bravery undertaken by the Holy Trinity, but would form the basis for almost all bomb disposal education thereafter. With each successive diffusion, so too did the problems become more tricky and the risk greater. But the rewards, both in safety and knowledge, kept Charles, Eileen, and Fred coming back for more each time. An official report at the time described them by saying, on many occasions they cleared everyone away from the danger area and proceeded to operate alone. Deliberately, they exposed themselves daily to danger. Through these perilous adventures, Charles Howard, the Earl of Suffolk, acquired the nickname Wild Jack, stating that he fully expected one day to find the bomb with my name on it. Well, that day unfortunately arrived in May of 1941 at Erith Marshes in Kent. The Germans had dropped a 250-kilo bomb some 6 months before, which had been transported still live to the marshes in Kent, known to all as the Bomb Cemetery, a barren place scattered with undifused bombs waiting to be made safe by experts. So long had this particular bomb been in residence there that the officials had begun to refer to it as Old Faithful, which, as it transpired, was the name of the bomb with Wild Jack's name upon it. That afternoon, as the Holy Trinity went about their work, Old Faithful exploded, taking not just the brave trio on to the next life, but 11 others working in the general area. All were killed instantly, except Eileen Morden, whose notes on the working of the bomb were also lost. She died shortly afterwards in an ambulance as a medical team battled to save her life. The deeds of the Holy Trinity were not forgotten, and even Winston Churchill himself paid tribute to this brave group of unlikely heroes by writing in his seminal 1945 book, The Second World War, that one bomb disposal squad I remember, which may be taken as symbolic of many others. It consisted of 3 people, the Earl of Suffolk, his lady private secretary, and his chauffeur. They called themselves the Holy Trinity. Their prowess and continued existence got around among all who knew, and 34 unexploded bombs did they tackle with urbane and smiling efficiency. But the 35th claimed its forfeit. Up went the Earl of Suffolk in his Holy Trinity. But we may be sure that, as for Mr. Valiant for Truth, all the trumpets sounded for them on the other side. John Masefield, the author of books such as The Box of Delights and The Midnight Folk, and at the time of Charles Howard's death, the Poet Laureate of the United Kingdom, immortalized Wild Jack in verse. He loved the bright ship with the lifting wing. He felt the anguish in the hunted thing. He dared the dangers which beset the guides, who lead men to the knowledge nature hides. Probing and playing with the lightning thus, he and his faithful friends met death for us.
Is it a bit dusty in here all of a sudden? Beautiful stuff, Mr. Roach. On to the latter part of my previous statement. Bomb disposal. That's got to be a bit tricky, hasn't it? All that ticking and beeping and wires aplenty. Or is that just what the movies have led us to believe? Here to dispel any myths and prove to Batman that some days you actually can get rid of a bomb, it's our very own boy wonder, Mr. Ben Taylorson.
With the central conceit of 10 Seconds to Hell being the inherent danger posed to a post-war bomb disposal team left to deal with the unexploded aftermath of World War II aerial raids, the depiction of the actual bomb disarmament process is somewhat crucial to the film's attempt to build tension. It's true to say you don't need to know much or indeed anything about bombs to understand what's going on in this film, as every viewer soon gains the rudimentary understanding that if you carefully take the fuse out, the bomb won't blow up. Or something like that, unless it has 2 fuses or something, then kaboom! But I thought it might be helpful to present you with a little more in-depth information about how bombs such as those depicted work, and how they're disarmed. I had to exercise a certain degree of caution when undertaking my research, however, as there's always certain global agencies on the lookout for idiots typing "how do bombs work" into Google. So, should this be my last episode before I'm shipped off to Guantanamo Bay, can I just say it's been a pleasure. The bomb is of course a cinematic action staple, and we've all no doubt seen several examples of bombs being disarmed in the nick of time and thus saving the day. Bombs are fundamentally simple devices, an explosive of some sort and a detonator of some sort, all contained within a casing. In the movies, the methods for disarming a bomb are usually one of the following. Number 1, cutting a wire. Stereotypically there's a choice of wires, cut the right one and our hero saves the day. Cut the wrong one and they'll be turned from a solid human being into a person mist. Number 2, there's an off button of some sort, handy if you're prone to accidentally arming your own device, but not something that particularly builds tension. Number 3, there's a code to solve to disarm it, very much like high stakes Wordle or Death Boggle. And number 4, it can't be stopped, so instead the device must be shot into the sea or hurled into space or into the La Brea tar pits, where it can explode without causing harm. But the bombs depicted in 10 Seconds to Hell cannot be disarmed using any of these methods, nor indeed can they be thrown into space or similar by Jack Palance, although that would have been great. No, instead they must be disarmed like what World War II bombs would have been in real life like. As mentioned earlier, it all seems to come down to the fuse. Aerial bombs can be detonated either by a fuse containing a small explosive charge to initiate the main charge and make the bomb explode, or by a pistol, a firing pin in a case which strikes the detonator when triggered. What we see in 10 Seconds to Hell are bombs which contain both of these triggers, and are therefore particularly difficult to disarm, as both triggers need to be deactivated before the bomb is safe, and the removal or deactivation of one could set the other off. The majority of bombs dropped in World War II were armed with percussion fuses, which are designed to explode on impact as the bomb hits the target. These could be super quick or instant effect percussion fuses, but there were also delayed percussion fuses which, as you might expect from the name, delayed the explosion by a second or so, allowing for some penetration of the target before the bomb went off. Some others were armed with time delay fuses, an intentional and particularly unpleasant way of delaying the explosion of the bomb from anything from minutes to days, catching the enemy unawares. The time delay fuses in these bombs worked via a gradual chemical reaction that ate away at the dividing discs between the firing pin and the primary charge. When the chemical, typically acetone, had dissolved the discs, the bomb would go off. In every case, if the fuse is successfully removed from the bomb, it will not detonate as there's nothing to trigger the explosives contained within the bomb casing. Unless, as we see in our movie, it is fitted with some sort of anti-withdrawal device. Simply put, if the fuse is removed, a secondary fuse or trigger will set the bomb off. The only way to successfully disarm the bomb is to either remove both fuses at the same time, or prevent the secondary fuse from detonating the explosion. In our movie, the secondary trigger appears to be a clockwork device of some sort as we hear it ticking shortly before the bomb goes off. We also know there's a pistol device involved, as at one point an explosion is prevented by a well-placed finger stopping the firing pin from striking the detonator. As I'm sure you can imagine, in reality this was, and indeed is, just as dangerous a profession as is depicted on screen in 10 Seconds to Hell. This is perhaps best summed up with a few lines about Eric Moxey, RAF squadron leader, who developed an automatic fuse extractor like the one we see in the movie, allowing bomb disposal operators to take cover at a distance while disarming devices. Although it did not remove the danger completely, as someone still had to approach the device to confirm that the fuse had been removed successfully, and it didn't always work. But the device was a literal lifesaver. However, the introduction of anti-withdrawal devices and delayed fuses increased the danger. As unexploded bombs with new devices began to be found during World War II, the successful removal and recovery of fuses would prove invaluable in dealing with such devices in the future. Bombs that fell on RAF Biggin Hill on the 27th of August 1940 were new in design, and Eric Moxey was called in to offer his expertise. He was able to successfully defuse one, but was killed trying to disarm the second. He was posthumously awarded the George Cross. In short, the nature of the work, and indeed the inherent danger depicted in 10 Seconds to Hell, seems pretty darn accurate to me.
Hard not to have full respect for anyone with that amount of bravery, isn't it? I mean, researching, reading, typing, speaking. It's not for everyone, you know. Excellent work, Mr. T. Let's move on to the film itself, shall we? As previously mentioned, 10 Seconds to Hell, directed and partly written by Robert Aldrich, focuses on a group of 6 bomb disposal experts in Berlin. Post-war and wanting to rebuild towards a better future, they're quickly tasked with the daunting task of ridding the city of any unexploded armaments that are being discovered.
Tell me, Major, what is today's going rate for experts?
The regrettable truth is that the mortality rate has been so high, we haven't been able to determine whether our applicants were expert or amateur.
If they don't come back to talk about it, they're amateur.
Not necessarily. Everyone makes mistakes. But in this business, you only make one.
No, an expert doesn't make a mistake, not when he's betting his life against an extra ration card.
Major, does your offer include all 6 of us? You see, ever since the middle of the war and even after our capture, we've all had identical training.
Oh, yes, of course. We can use all of you.
Oh, education and training should bring a better salary, don't you think so, Major?
Yes, if amateurs were receiving X pay and X rations, shouldn't experts receive 2X?
All right, gentlemen, you have a deal at 2X as experts. Now, will you report to Van der Heidstrasse number 27? Here, you'll find it on my board. I'll send over one of our staff to help you with the administration setup. Sing out if there's anything else you want. I'll probably drop by to check you in.
The group is headed up by Eric and Carl, played by the aforementioned Palance and Chandler, respectively. It quickly becomes apparent that there is something of a power struggle at the top.
Major Haven suggested that you elect a chief. Someone to sign reports, be responsible for procedure and so forth.
I'd be glad to take over.
I think we should all vote on it. I nominate Court.
Second the motion.
Agreed.
Since we're suddenly becoming so democratic, I'd like to suggest we have more than one candidate.
I agree.
You're probably quite right. Did you wish to nominate someone here, Woods?
Obviously. Me. The welfare and well-being of our friendly little fraternity can best be safeguarded by a man who calculates the risk as opposed to the opportunity. Not by a man who, on the basis of an emotional judgment, might risk his life as well as the lives of others in a useless cause. Obviously, I am best suited to the job.
Agreed, then. We'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of Herr Woods? And all those in favor of Herr Kortner? Looks like you have the job.
I'll need an assistant. How about you, Carl?
You know, sometimes your sense of fair play is nauseating.
Actually, next to me, you have the least to live for. I figure we're both expendable.
Add to this a bet, agreed by all, that whoever lives longest will collect everyone's wages, and a love triangle between Eric, Carl, and their landlady Margot, played by the stunning Martine Carroll. Tensions begin to rise, and trust is something very hard to come by. We come on now to the first of 2 roundtables. We thought we would do things a little differently this time. The first is spoiler-free, and doesn't reveal the details of the ending. Should your curiosity be piqued enough to check out the film, then we won't ruin anything for you. The second roundtable is spoiler-filled, including exactly how the film comes to its conclusion. We thought it only fair to give you a bit of a heads up. So here we go then. Roundtable Part 1, with myself, Adam, Ben, and Kev.
So, chaps, 10 Seconds to Hell starts with a voiceover that introduces you to the characters and a quick setting of the scene. Do you think this is really necessary?
I think that the introduction of the characters comes a bit quick and thick and fast. It's quite difficult, I think, on a first viewing, to remember who everyone is and to assign them any particular characteristics, because they're kind of just six identikit people. I mean, obviously the main two we come to know and understand the relationship between. But as regards the sort of the overview of the situation that they're in, I think that's really good. I love the stock footage of the bombing of that took place in the Second World War. I think that's very dramatic. I think it's that really sort of thin line between beauty and terror, because you're watching this amazing stock footage of bombers dropping their payloads over the cities of Europe, and it's an incredible spectacle. And I think it does add the context of what these guys were asked to do. As I say, I think the transition into explaining the characters is a little problematic, in so much that you get, and here's such, and here's such, and also such, he likes animals, and such has a wife, and such. It's like, am I expected to retain any of this information? I'm going to find it difficult to do so. But it really gets you on board immediately with what the film is about. So I'll give it definitely some credit there.
I agree with you, Ben. I don't think it was entirely successful, and I certainly think that because it begins and ends the film, it does take away any emotional resonance that you might have walked away with, or any sort of final thoughts you might have formulating around your head. The problem is that, we don't know these people, and the film does a decent enough job of introducing them to you anyway through film, instead of telling you who these people are, because I don't need a list of names. If I want that, I can look at the credits list. It's not a problem. So I do think that's a slight misfire, to be honest. It's interesting you say identikit as well, Ben, because Jack Palance, don't you think he looks like about 5 identikits put together? You, Jack, I'm a number 1, and
I just like the fact that we've got a tangible connection between Hammer and Tango and Cash. That's all I'm happy with.
Oh, my. What about yourself, Smokey?
The narration bugged me. I think we had something fairly similar in the Steel Bayonet, and I thought that handled it better than this did. Whereas, it was more of a broad overview of, these are the fighting chaps, they've returned. Although in the Steel Bayonet, it was they've returned to be sent out again. This is they've returned to carry on working, basically. So yeah, it fell a little flat there. And as you say, it runs through a list of names where, as Adam said, that the film does the exposition of who they are fairly well. I mean, even with the first one who dies very soon into the film, didn't really need to know anything about him. It was just he was one of the crew and he ends up dying.
Klubke.
Yeah, the youngest lad, wasn't it? Yeah. And so that the narration part wasn't for me, but there's no way I can disagree with saying about the stock footage, because it's so stark and it's brutal and it brings you right into it. So that's a massive plus point. They probably should have just started with that, to be perfectly fair.
Yeah, I don't think they needed it.
No, and then you get the following scene of when they meet the Major. That's all the exposition you need. They're bomb disposal experts. They're looking for work now. They're back in Berlin. That's pretty much it, really. That's it. Don't give us the list of characters.
This story deals with these 6 who had 2 things in common. As German soldiers, they had been in disfavor with the Nazis. And because of this, they were trained in the exact science of deactivating live bombs. Globke, the boy, who somehow through it all had held on to fragments of his youth and innocence. Tillig, who asked for little except a chance to laugh again. Sulky, the only one with threads of a previous life to pick up again. A wife and child, who were miraculously still alive. Loeffler, who faced death insignificantly and found life in the animals he befriended. The big man, Carl Wirtz, with one big idea in mind, his own survival. And one way to assure it, play for high stakes and deal from the bottom of the deck. There was another big man, Eric Kortner, a man whom other men followed instinctively. A strange brooding mixture of passion and compassion. Passion for the promise of words like right and justice. Compassion for other confused and lost souls. These 6 then coming home, and destined to share in the gigantic challenge of converting the rubble of war into the makings of a new and lasting peace.
The narration makes it sound like a documentary, which does a disservice to the story therein. I mean, Kev, what did you think about the opening?
I'm with you as far as the bombing footage for a start off, because I thought about it and thought, well, this will have been taken by people that aren't even trained cameramen or directors or anything. These are the air crews. And I was thinking about it, and there's so many directors who then went on to become proper film directors. And I thought, well, as tough as it seems, you've probably seen somebody that did become a talent of some sort at work here. But I feel like the final narration is very incongruous. I think they could have really done without that, because it should have finished where it does finish.
Agreed.
Just the final
it's
words.
quite jarring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you have that sort of movie cliche thing of they say the film's name. They say the film. Oh, there's the name of the film. There's the name of the film. Well, they didn't. They did the name of the book instead.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just sort of crowbar.
Yeah. Because it was originally going to be called the Phoenix.
Exactly.
Right. There are early posters of it with the Phoenix as still the film title. So going on to other bits that we think might not be quite necessary, how do we feel about the casting of Jack Palance, who is a known Robert Aldrich collaborator, if you like? So,
well, I have to give it a little bit of context, because I think I said this to you guys when I first watched this film. I think this is an incredibly beautiful film. But it's a very stark, raw, monochrome beauty. I think Robert Aldrich is incredibly talented at pulling out the art from a monochrome image. I mean, he directed Whatever Happens to Baby Jane, and while that's a grotesque film to watch, it's certainly striking. And I find the imagery in this film incredibly striking. And what I love about it the most is that you have this destroyed version of Germany, obviously post-war, obviously filmed out on location. And then you have a face like Jack Palance's against it, which looks like this sort of bombed out ruin in itself. And I think his face, I don't mean that in a mean way. I just think it's so stark and so angular. It's like watching a Picasso move in and amongst this already like stark and destroyed and ruined, very angular city. And while I am fascinated by his face, it did distract me, I must be honest, from the actual story beats, because I was watching it and going, oh my God, every time he turns his head, it just sort of changes shape. It's like this ever sort of evolving dodecahedron of angles. It's like his chin will stick out one minute, and then he'll turn and face the camera, and his hair goes out in horns, and it's like he's just all angles. It's just wild. So I think while he is an incredibly striking man, and I think every face in this has its own sort of box of treasures behind it. Martine Carroll is incredibly beautiful, but she has this kind of punk aesthetic. She looks like Nancy Spungen almost. Very bedraggled, but sort of seamless, but she's very punk. And then you have Jeff Chandler, who you're trying to work out, is that really his hair? Is it silver like that? Has he got talcum powder on it? And I know his voice from all of the old time radio stuff he used to do, and Hitchhiker and stuff like that by Ida Lupino. And you have Jack Palance's face, and I found the first time I watched this, I was so struck by the way everything looked that I did miss much of the story. The second time I watched it, I was sort of watching it more for the story, and I enjoyed it on a whole other level. But I think Jack Palance as a leading man, I think the first time you see him in this film, you will definitely think, my God, I mean, just as an image, he is otherworldly. Whether or not he has acting talent, the debate rages on. But I think as a screen presence, you can see why people said, "Oh my God, I need that thing in my films."
as a bad guy though, usually. But picking up on Jeff Chandler, I feel like he seems like a better call for casting, because I think this is probably why I didn't realise that they were all German characters the first time round. Yeah, because even though it tells you in the opening narration, again, you've got so much information.
Yeah,
exactly. It becomes too much. Yeah. And it doesn't help that you've got Jack Palance, because you can't wrestle yourself away from Jack Palance as anything else but the ultimate American bad guy. So to have him as a good guy, and then Jeff Chandler as there, who actually looks like the ideal Teutonic man. You know, he is tall, blonde, blue-eyed. He's the perfect German. And it's a great piece of casting for him. But yeah, I see what you mean about Jack Palance. Is slightly at odds there. What did you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jack Palance has a face like an undiscovered Rubik's puzzle, but but it does. I mean, I'm not going to reiterate what Adam said, other than to say that I felt in the sort of the man's man scenes, he was excellent. In the other scenes, he was a huge distraction from the action. I would like to add a little bit to what Adam said about the location as well. I mean, the beautifully chosen locations, you know, and a little bit about the sound design as well. That lovely sound of the sort of scraping, clinking brickwork that goes with the bomb sort of disposal scenes is, it's exceptionally well done. But yeah, I mean, I thought he was I wouldn't say odd, an interesting casting choice. There were safer options out there, I would say, than him, and he does add a certain uniqueness to the film, but it isn't always a positive uniqueness, I'd say. And to be fair, and you know, he's not the only one. Again, as Adam has alluded to, whose casting choice makes you think, oh, okay, well, you know, that's interesting, but is it the best choice? But it's nice to be talking about him. Nice to see him in a Hammer film. But yeah, funny face Jack Palance.
Smokey, follow that up for day.
Well, I didn't go as elaborate as what was it? A discarded Rubik's puzzle,
an undiscovered Rubik's.
Undiscovered. Sorry,
undiscovered.
I was going more for the papier-mâché heads that they make in Escape from Alcatraz. He looks like one of those. But
those Easter Island lads, I'm telling you.
Yeah. But regardless of whether Jack Palance can act or not, it's been debated for a long time. But as the words I think you all used is presence. He has presence. He is incredibly striking. But I will say something about the casting which I will really praise is that, of course, you have Jack Palance and you have Jeff Chandler, who both have very unique looks, you know, when you stand them side by side. And then the other four guys, like they've picked them out of All Quiet on the Western Front. They're disposable, expendable soldiers.
Yeah.
And I think that's very clever because they don't all look massively different. They're all in the same stuff. They're about the same height. Okay, the ages are a little different, granted, but they're just plucked. It's like they're plucked from the trenches and just plopped down there. And so I think that deserves quite a lot of credit. As you say, Adam, Martine Carroll is stunning. I mean, what a shining light she is every time she's on the screen. Making her French was all right. Fair enough. Again, casting. Fair enough.
I found that interesting because there's a little line that's pretty throwaway where Jack Palance is first talking to her and he says, "You're French." And she says, "Of course. Does that matter?" And he says, "Not anymore."
Yeah, because obviously if he's playing a German, they were enemies only a short time ago.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good line.
Nice little undercurrent.
Yeah, I must admit, when you said about the whole thing, you know, if it's in the opening narration about them being German, I missed that, but you just kind of have to work it out.
Isn't it strange though that we've all picked up on the fact that the story details are kind of like they're not clear really. You sort of wander into the film and you sort of get to know, and all you see really is a bunch of men and their sort of interactions, and then there's this sort of kind of bomb disposal thriller at the heart of it. But then when you actually step back and watch it a second time, or you get other bits from it, you go, oh, actually, oh, they're German. Oh, actually, no, they're British. And oh, actually, oh, there's a thing. It's really weird. And perhaps it did need that framing device.
Now, a word that keeps coming to my mind is clunky. There's lots of things in this that are clunky. There's a couple of bits of the storyline that are. There's a couple of bits of the script and several scenes that are as well, which just felt clunky and a little jarring. That just left me a little frustrated while I was watching it on each occasion I watched it.
Well, talking of multiple watches, I mean, on the first watch, I thought that Jack Palance was a bit unreadable and really a bit boring, to be honest. And it was only after the second time spending some time thinking about this, I thought about the levels of anxiety that he was suffering. Coming back to a bombed out Berlin, which he'd actually helped build in the first place, and then being told to face death in everyday locations all the time. You can see why he would clam up, and he would seem very stoic and not particularly an interesting man to be around.
Yeah, I mean, but they're all tired because they've all been forced to participate in a war they didn't agree with. Because that's what is explained in the one of the other elements explained in the ridiculously sort of frantic opening 3 minutes. Is that all 6 of them, for whatever reason, weren't Nazi supporters. They were given this job of disposing of bombs because it was effectively in lieu of being sent to concentration camps. It was a death sentence. You're going to basically it's a sick joke, I think they call it in the script. Yeah. And as you say, the Jack Palance character Eric. Basically, he didn't want to go to war in the first place. He didn't agree with what the Nazis were doing. He's seen his life's works, as much as his life was before then, destroyed in front of him, and the rubble of it is all around him. And he's very, very tired and emotionally drained to the point of having next to nothing left. And hence, all of that is explained in what I would argue is perhaps a slightly unwise subplot. The Margot character, which I think is where the film is really let down with that subplot, is that it's rushed and a mess. But yeah, it's as Kev, as you say, it's very easy to dismiss his character as being one-dimensional, but the dimensions are there, but they're perhaps a little bit more subtle than the film necessarily affords the viewer on a first viewing.
Yeah, agreed.
It's very strange because don't you find sometimes when you're watching a film, oh my God, this film feels like it's talking down to me. And you feel like you're being spoon-fed stuff you knew already. And that's the most, I don't know, it really puts me off a film. It really doesn't make me want to root for the film in a way. But in this case, it's very odd. It's a very artistically made film. And you'd think that the information was coming through, but it doesn't seem to come through like the information you need in order to fully enjoy the thriller aspect of it. It doesn't really come through well enough. And so you go, well, I didn't really understand they were German, I didn't really get this and that. And then you watch it again and you think, okay, right, that meant that and that meant that, and you have to kind of watch it all through to get what you need to understand the beginning. And it's like, in a weird way, I don't like being talked down to by a film, but I kind of needed to be talked down to slightly in this. But then again, they put that voiceover at the beginning, and I felt like I was being talked down to, and I took against it in that way. So, in that way, it is kind of badly made. I get it. But I do, like, there's so much to like in the film. Like, I feel bad saying that, but there is so much as well that I just go, oh, it's like you took 2 halves of a film and messed them up, like you shuffled them up like a pack of cards, and then went, great, there's your film. And it's like, right, well, I needed the 5 of clubs before I could enjoy the 2 of hearts. It's very weird.
There's a very interesting quote from Robert Aldrich, who said that, because obviously he wrote the screenplay, he came in basically and tore up half the screenplay and rewrote it himself. And it was very interesting to see an interview he did later on, many years later, saying that he was to the film's detriment. He actually admitted he made it worse.
Really?
Which I think is quite impressive for someone like him to admit that. But yeah, he was humble enough to admit that I can't remember the exact quote, but it was along the lines of, I was to this film's detriment.
Interesting, because I think visually he was not. I think visually,
oh yeah, it was just the scripts. Yeah.
what stands out for me is the visuals. And
it's a beautiful movie, and I have to say, thank you for the gorgeous print provided by Mr. Moore there. It's a stunning print. Yeah.
But it's Ken Adam again, isn't it, on production design duties? So
wow.
Yeah. As well as that, Aldrich at the time was kicking off because apparently United Artists cut 40 minutes of the running time and cut a lot of plot strands out, which probably explains the romance that feels a little bit rushed.
Yeah, it must do, Kev, because they go from meeting each other to falling in love with no scenes in between.
Yeah.
And it feels ludicrous, and that would explain why that particular strand of the plot doesn't work.
Can I ask? I just want your guys' opinion. So, Carl, Jeff Chandler's character, is he the most horrible character we've encountered?
No.
In a Hammer film?
No.
He's getting there.
He does an attempted rape. He tries to kill his best mate. It's pretty damn bad, isn't it?
No, I would say I can't excuse the scene with Margot, but I don't think I'd use quite as inflammatory rhetoric as calling it an attempted rape. But it's very much open to interpretation, and I can see why you would say that. But aside from that, Carl sticks to what they've agreed to, and they all agree to it. He doesn't at any point change the deal. He doesn't at any point do anything. He doesn't change the rules. They're all broken men, and he sticks to what they've agreed. I
just hated him.
But you're supposed to.
I think you're meant to.
Oh, of course you are.
Yeah,
but he's just.
But I do think as well isn't the implication that he's maybe not directly responsible, but maybe implicated in a couple of other people meeting their fate too. Sort of. I mean,
really?
Isn't it sort of implied that Loeffler, when he goes down at the end, isn't it sort of, he just, all you see is he's there and they can't work out, why he didn't come up earlier and stuff like that. I don't know, but you get the feeling it's all nefarious and all kind of, Carl. I mean, I must be honest with you. I went into this film thinking it was going to be And Then There Were None, but with a bomb squad. And, there's this insidious guy picking them off one by one. You find out, it's that classic sort of trope. It's not that at all, and I do think a couple of them do meet their fate. You do get the feeling that Carl's sort of pushing buttons, or sort of not letting them out of the deal because he. Yeah. I don't know. It's very it's kind of insidious.
You could get that from the sort of, because he's always sort of, when they're having their meetings, he's always sort of sneaking around in the background, isn't he, of them, and then also he didn't take losing the vote to who would be leader very well at the start. So I suppose maybe it was just his.
He's kind of the villainous presence, but he's not really directly responsible for anyone's death until the last scene when he directly tries to, directly tries to influence what's happening, shall we say?
But there's a beautiful line where he says something. I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, "I've been on the losing side all of my life, and I'm determined not to be this time." That to me says there's a lot more to Carl than just being, the pantomime villain. And I think you see that. And even the end, and again, I'm not going to spoil it, but there is an option that he could do something even beyond what happens. And there is a certain acceptance in the final few seconds of the film. And,
it does boil down to a kind of nobility, doesn't it, at the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Going back to the actual bomb disposal bit, I think this is possibly the first time I've seen the intricacies in such a way, because you've actually got these men facing bombs they've never actually experienced before. You've got it when Globke comes across a new type of fuse that's a double fuse, and because of course he's not able to relate what's going off, they still are in the dark about how to disable it. And I love this decision that you've got, because it actually puts you in the dark as much as they are. You're never quite sure who's going to bite the bullet next. It's just the scenes. How did you feel about the actual disposal scenes? Because you've been set up with Globke already having that uncertainty. How do you feel about how they shot the scenes of the disposal? Because I know that Sutke is quite different, because you only see his arms and his legs. You don't actually see him get blown up. You only see 2 explosions, but it's quite interesting.
Best part of the film for me. I thought the cinematography that was beautiful. It looks stark, but it's so well in focus. Aldrich is great in this. There's a couple of scenes where the background and the foreground are both in focus at the same time. And it's used so well. There's a shot earlier on when they're having their meeting, and the shot is through the banister of them, and it sort of pans up to frame them all. And they do it a couple of times with the bomb scenes as well. But, I mean, regardless of, again, I'm going to use that word, regardless of how clunky some of the other scenes are, these are pure nail-biting tension. And it does it really, really well. A couple of times you see just Palance, but over just a little brick wall, just pulling a rope, and it's just sort of like you don't know how wide that bomb's blast radius is going to be. You don't know if he's back far enough. You don't, as you say, the death you see of the poor chap where you only see his feet and his hands. And that's a horrible shot, by the way. You see that guy's hands start to shake in front of the bomb just before it goes off. And that's nasty. It's so well done. So yes, for me, the bomb scenes, the bomb disposal scenes, best part of the film for me.
You mentioned the sound design before, Ben. How did you feel about the sound design on this?
Yeah, this is where it really comes into its own, isn't it? With the clinking, scraping of the bricks and the squeaking of the nuts as they're trying to take the fuse out of the bombs. It's these scenes, they make the film. I mean, my not to jump forward to my overall sort of feelings of the film, but the broad strokes of the film about this bunch of guys who are they're all effectively some sort of Suicide Squad, fairly sort of noble guys for the right reasons. Facing this kind of death. The issue with the film isn't these scenes; it's what strings it together for me. But I really like the fact that they, after the initial death, they then put an elongated scene in where Eric defuses this American 2,000-pounder, and we get to understand as a viewer exactly what they do when it comes to defusing bombs. I do think they should have some sort of bomb sheet they could put over their heads, but maybe that's a modern invention, a bomb sheet.
Like a door to stop the nuclear blast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, paint themselves white to deflect it.
Like a fridge.
Yeah.
What I did think it was for a film where effectively we're counting down the deaths of 6 people, the way in which it's written at least avoids all 6 of them getting blown up in the same way, which I thought was, at least there's a bit of tricky writing in there to make sure there's a bit of change and ingenuity in our death scenes.
Yeah.
And a couple of them, because of that, work really well. And a couple of the sort of the scenes are extraordinarily dramatic because of that as well. So no, I mean I liked the way it sounded and looked and felt for these scenes. My issue is not with these at all. And again, to come back to what I said about Jack Palance, I may have been hypercritical of him before, but he works really well in these scenes. These are the scenes he's made for, because he's just acting against an inanimate object, which is where he succeeds.
That was such a backhanded compliment.
That's the sickest burn I've ever heard.
Well done. I mean, I love the decision to not go completely overboard with the usual tense high strings, for instance. You've got no music whatsoever, and you've just got men dealing with bombs. And instead of all that, you've just got the sound of air and them breathing it for most of the time.
There's at one point, Kev, where they bring a drum in to mimic Eric's heartbeat, and it's actually a little bit intrusive, but it still works pretty well, I would say.
I'm totally with you on the fact that these are the best scenes in the film. It happens a few times, and what I really like is that they don't sort of spoon feed you the information about how to dismantle a bomb. You see it happening a couple of times until you understand innately that this fuse must be unscrewed. So what they do is they kind of put this hubcap around the screw, then they wind a rope around the hubcap, then they crawl to a safe distance and pull on the rope, and it sort of spins the hubcap thing and unwinds the fuse. Then they have this awkward moment where, it unscrews and falls out. Will it set the bomb off or will it not? And then they have to crawl down, if it hasn't set the bomb off, and sort of pull the hubcap containing the fuse out from the end of the bomb. And that's basically how it works. But you don't, they don't tell you that. You just watch it happening a few times until you understand that. And what I really like is that what Aldrich does is that he either has you at their end of the rope pulling on it, and you look down at the deep focus bomb, so you can see it in the distance, but it's perfectly in focus, and you can see if it's going to blow up. Or they have you at the other end. You're with the bomb, and you're looking up at the rope being pulled, and you see it going tense and not. So you're either with them looking at it going, oh, it's going to go off any second, or you're actually sat next to the bomb, next to your face, and you're thinking, oh my God, it's going to go off any second. And it's beautifully done. And as I say, the photography is crisp and beautiful and very, very well done in monochrome, and it's so stark. And as you said, the lack of music just adds to this like sparse, stark, spare atmosphere. So I think that they're definitely the best scenes in the film. Yeah.
Cold Berlin. Everywhere looks cold all the time. You can just see everybody breathing every second of this film. They must have filmed it in January.
You can see Jack Palance breathing through his gills.
Before we move on to our ratings, then, there is a wealth of very well-written lines in this particular film. What are your favourites, Ben?
I have a couple. They both come in the final sort of scene. Eric and Carl have had this sort of to and fro the whole way through, and as I've mentioned already, Carl very much feels as though he's had sort of the short straw his entire life, and that Eric has always had the long straw. And there's a scene right towards the end where they're forced to defuse a bomb together, and advice is switched between the two, and ultimately Eric has proved to be right, and Carl just simply says to him, "You're always right, aren't you?" And Eric comes back with, "No, I'm not always right, but I was right this time." And that kind of sums up their relationship, which as does the sort of the final line of the film, I think, which, again, it's no spoiler because it doesn't allude to what happens. But, the two of them have to defuse this bomb together, and Carl just says to Eric, "I guess it's still my bomb." And then has to go back to it, which I think is, again, I think is a nice summation of the film.
That's good.
Smokey?
Yeah, mine's actually very near the start, and I'll paraphrase it just so it's in context, because it's something that makes you. It's quite a pithy line, but it's actually quite stark when you really think about it. Is when the Major is talking to them, and he's sort of saying, "Well, we need to work out who's an expert and who's an amateur." And then they say, "Well, if you send an expert out and he doesn't come back, then he was an amateur." And it's like, it's quite pithy, but it's actually quite brutal as well. In a sort of a really stark way that you sort of say, well, you can still die if you're an expert, And it really hit that line. Because the more you think about it, the more you think, God damn, these are things they have to, real people had to face every day in the shadow of a war.
For years.
And it was, but I thought it was a powerful line. I really liked it.
Any particular lines that you're fond of, Adam?
My favourite line, it comes from, I thought was quite funny actually, is when they're trying to rescue the guy under the bomb, and the paramedic comes in and goes, "Open his shirt. I don't want to give him a hypo in the face."
I thought I'd misheard that.
Can't you tell which is which?
Very matter of fact. Well, for me, it has to be Frau Bauer, who's their handler that we've not mentioned, and
she's great.
She takes a call. She's the one that really mans the desks and makes sure that everybody's out on the jobs. But at one point, she actually gets a call from the guys at the canal, and she says, "Are you hatching them?"
Oh yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Really good.
Yeah.
It's like she'd finally gotten to the end of her tether, wasn't it?
yeah. It's great because there are so many moments of levity, and you forget that they had to maintain a sense of humor about this, and for years, I mean, God Almighty, like ourselves, we're still finding bombs now, but. Then there's another bit where the old guy takes them to see this massive 2,000-pound American bomb. They say, right, it's definitely a 2,000-pound bomb. And he goes, "If you don't need me, I'll take off. It's all yours." Yeah. And you think, yeah, I'd definitely be you.
Absolutely.
On to our ratings then. Adam, I'll start with you, seeing as though I seem to be leaving you to last all the time, just because you're on the Zoom call as that. No other reason, honest.
Last.
Honest.
Honest.
I think it's an incredibly well-made film, but it's also not an incredibly well-made film. I think in terms of the story, I was thinking about this earlier on. Why doesn't it work as well as it should for me? And I think it's because there's too much fat on it. I think Martine Carroll's character, if you boil it down, she doesn't need to be in this story at all. I think if you'd have amalgamated her character with perhaps the handler's character, maybe, but even then it's like not necessary. And because you don't need a love triangle to cause conflict between Jack Palance and Jeff Chandler, which is the main crux of the story. You have these two people who have come from a war, they're hired again to do their job, and their conflict develops because they learn more about each other. The problem is that the filmmakers have said, what we need to do to get the audience to understand why they hate each other so much in such a short period of time is we need to give them a love triangle so that they will go against each other. The thing is, you have Jack Palance's character he was an architect and he was anti-Nazi. And you have Jeff Chandler's character who was the same sort of thing, but he was being punished for it. And it's like there's a conflict there anyway. And then when the guys vote for Jack Palance to be the leader instead of Jeff Chandler, there's another conflict for you. Then they have this bet going on with all the other guys. Whoever lives through this gets the money. There's 3 reasons why they should be working their way towards becoming enemies. And when you have Martine Carroll's character in there as well, saying, oh, let's give the audience a reason, to think that these guys should hate each other. It's like, if you took her out, it doesn't matter to the story. There are a few characters, and it's not me being sexist, I just don't think this needed a romance.
No, agreed.
Anything in it.
It didn't.
But it's not just me being like, this doesn't need a woman. I think if you took out 2 of the other soldier characters, the same thing would happen. The film would not be affected. This should be a 72-minute film about 2 guys who come to hate each other and, are polar opposites. And it turns out that in the end, one of them has to go because that's the sort of doomed job they do. I did like it. And I think it's an incredibly beautiful and handsome film to look at. And it's an intriguingly visual film, especially because of Jack Palance's face. But I do think there's far too much fat on it. I think when you have a thriller that's supposed to be taut and tense and, really make you on edge, you need to take as much fat off the bone as you can, because at the bone is where the nerves are, and that's what you're trying to get to with the thriller. So for that reason, it's not perfect, but I didn't mind it. And I think it's a really handsome feather in Hammer's cap, and especially because it's a UFA film. You have an American director filming in a German studio with the help of Hammer Studios in Britain. So it's a truly international thing. It's a shame it didn't work slightly better. It wasn't a bit more sort of perfected and whittled down to its essentials. So I would give it a 7. But it's sort of, it's like a high 7 because I admire it a lot, and I think it's a nice prestige picture for Hammer. But I don't think it's perfect.
Smokey, I'm looking forward to yours.
Well, first off, as is the usual, we'll do a bit of a Hammer watch.
Oh, that's nice. I really like these. I'm pleased you included them.
Yeah, it is when you do the proper research.
Hey, Richard Waters is in this,
he is.
Sorry,
he
who?
is. But this is who plays the Major.
Oh, right. Him. Thought I'd seen him before in something.
His 4th Hammer film, along with this and The Abominable Snowman. But also, we mentioned this the last time he popped up in The Abominable Snowman. He was the police that had to deal with the draw bomb in Blood Orange, which was one of our favourite scenes.
Oh, yeah.
But also, he was in Stolen Face as well. However, a bit more of the old Hammer watch, but slightly different this time, is something I discovered today, is that this, out of all the films we have watched for Hammer so far, is the longest film we have watched from Hammer so far.
Oh.
Granted, it's only by 1 single solitary minute, but still, it is the longest Hammer film.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. It trumps Cloudburst by a single minute. So.
No, it's not. That's not true. Sporting Love by far.
that just felt 5 times longer. Yeah. So our longest ever Hammer film. Yeah, I return to my favourite word for this episode: clunky. It's a bit of a mess. Don't get me wrong; it looks lovely. Robert Aldrich is a cracking director. He directed one of my favourite films of all time, with The Longest Yard, which I absolutely adore. So
With Adam Sandler.
It looks
Jason Statham.
the original, dear boy. The word Adam used there, it should be a prestige piece for Hammer, and it's just not. It looks pretty, but that's style over substance by then. And it shouldn't be this long. I know I complained about the time length often, but it's just too damn long. I know. It's too damn long. And it gets boring in places as well. So that bugged me. However, I did actually quite like Palance's performance in it. I thought it was fine. As you say, the more dramatic moments are great when he's being sort of tender and loving. It's sort of like... Ooh, step back from that a little bit, mate.
He's worse than Christopher Lee.
But
just, that kiss. Oh,
yeah.
It doesn't even connect lips. It just rubs his face.
Keep your angular face away from me.
I know, he
Jack.
rubs his face. The weird thing is, right, when he's trying to be romantic, he sort of grimaces into the kisses, doesn't he? He goes, hey, I love you. It looks like he's going to eat her. It's very weird. Like Mason Birch.
Anyway, Smokey, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. No, long story short, it's just this just has the ingredients to be so much better, and it's a shame that it's not. I've been in an hour between a 5 and a 6, so I'll give it a 6, but it's a low 6 for me. It's just frustrating because this should be great, and I think one for the Hammer completists only.
Before we go on to Ben, I want to pick up on your problems with it. I'm going to go in with my rating now. Forget you. For me, it's the glacial direction in some parts that can be tough to follow with 21st century eyes. Like you said about the spoon feeding, we've got so used to being spoon fed, and we've got so used to being fast edited to hell. You know, it's all thanks to MTV. So you've got to sort of retrain your brain before you start watching this, and I think it only really kicks in because I've watched it. I would say I've watched it 7 times this last week, just because it needed to click, and it does click, and it really does. I've really started to get used to the tempo of it, but it gives you time to soak up the atmosphere and think about all the consequences of the scenario. And this film brought up a lot of my ideas about stuff I'd never thought of before, like the nature of the men that were actually running into what could be their final moments without even knowing it, and whether or not they've got the right equipment, let alone the skills to do it. The fact that they explore this in such a matter-of-fact and almost documentary way feels refreshingly European, and it feels very German. And if this had been a British or an American production, the heroes would have been a hell of a lot more clear-cut and a lot less flawed and interesting. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Ooh, it's all over the board.
Oh, yeah, I think it's not quite a River Patrol, but it's getting there. Ben, 2.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with elements of things that you've all said. I'll start with you, Kerry. Definitely the European feel is something that is definitely worth mentioning. It does feel a bit sort of different gravy to what we've seen elsewhere with what Hammer. It definitely has that continental feel, partially helped by the location, but just the direction and the way in which the film is shot. Completely agree with you, Adam, about Martine Carroll's subplot being unnecessary, but it being no reflection on her or no indication of sexism in either our view or in the writing. I just don't think this was the right film for that particular plot. In fact, the simmering sort of hatred between the two main characters is diluted because of that three-way pull rather than improved. In fact, I think it's going back to what Kev said earlier, because scenes have been cut from this largely, I would imagine, around that. It dilutes it to a point where you don't really understand why they hate each other. Yes, these two very tired men have worked together throughout the war, and this sort of simmering resentment has built up, but I don't think the film really explains why that is. It reminded me, actually, of the weird sort of tonal relationship that we got in The Snorkel between the killer and the young girl, where you think, how can these two characters go on living this weird dynamic in the way they do? And I got a bit of that kind of feeling towards the end of this film. Why
another
do these
white-haired asshole?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, he reminded me very much of Peter Van Eyck. Actually, I thought it's not a detrimental comment. It's just sort of a factual. Going back to what I said, I enjoyed this, but there was a great film in this, and it wasn't great. And a great film would have stripped out all the unnecessary thing. It would have ramped up the tension of frankly, a story that the broad strokes of which are pretty genius, really. These 6 guys in a suicide squad who place this bet about the last one that's going to survive, and they're in it. They know the scenario they're in. And, the location and the backdrop, the beautiful visual backdrop. Beauty is obviously, sort of subjective, but for me, it was beautiful. I'm giving it a 7 as well. For me, it's a low 7 for me, because I do have issues with the film. Of all the Hammer films we've covered, I think that I found this one probably the most frustrating, because I do genuinely think this could have been great. Yeah, but I'm really pleased to have seen it, and I could definitely see myself going back and watching this again. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for me.
It's really interesting what you think of this film, because it didn't even strike me until you just said it, really, that when you have characters as complicated as Eric and Carl, you don't need any complications around it, because when you do that, when you bring in Martine Carroll's character, one of them has to turn into a caricature, and it's Carl, unfortunately. Because Eric has to be hero man, and Carl has to be, troublesome anti-hero instantly, because this character's been brought in to try and divide them up even further. But if you'd taken that out, they would have been far more nuanced, and their differences would have been far more complicated, and it would have been all greys instead of black and white. And as you say, when you take a film like this that has this concept at the heart of it, the more you put onto it, the quicker it sinks down to the bottom of the sea. Because this should have been the flying hellfish from Simpsons, the movie. It should have been that. That Abe Simpson versus Montgomery Burns kind of, they're making a bet who's going to be the last to, take the booty kind of thing. It's a very complicated, very hard film to sort of score, isn't it? Because you watch it and then you watch it again and you're like, God damn it, I can see what I was going for.
Yeah.
Probably the toughest one we've had to review so far, I reckon.
For at least a little while, definitely, yeah.
So, Globkey, Tillig, Suki, and then Lothley, which leaves Wirtz and Kurtner. If there is one, who will be the last man standing? If you don't want to have the ending of this as spoiled as Berlin is in this, we're giving you plenty of warning. But for now, here we'll go back to Smokey.
Okay, that's part 1 done and dusted. On to part 2. And if you weren't listening closely before, here's our Kev with your final warning.
Right, now we can go full spoilerific mode, because you've had plenty of warning by now. So, Smokey, the final act where we are down to Wirtz and Kurtner. How did you think this was going to play out, as opposed to how it did play out?
I thought it was great. I mean, it's really well made. I mean, at this point, you obviously know that Carl is definitely a bad one, and can he be trusted where a bomb is concerned? When he, you hear that blood-curdling scream of that he needs help. At first, you're sort of like, oh, okay, well, Eric's going to help Carl, and they're going to be best mates again. But that seed of doubt is already there. And the entire time that they're going after this second fuse of the bomb, it's always there as well. And then they throw in the added bit of the spanners he needs to sort the bomb out. He's left where he shouldn't have left them. And then that just heightens so the tension here is going well again. It's another bomb scene. But I must say, though, before we get again, spoilers, but before we get the
who cares?
The big explodey death of Carl, we do happen to get an absolutely fantastic punch, which is absolutely cracking. Almost as good as Bernard Breslau's in I Only Asked, but he was never going to get that kind of range. But no, I really like the final scene. I think it's great, and I think I'm sorry, Ben, but I'm going to say the big douche. He dies in a bomb explosion, so I was happy.
And you actually see it on screen.
Yes.
It's one of those two that you see on screen.
You see it on screen.
Yeah. Did you think it was actually going to pan out that way, or did you feel like it could take both of them at any time?
No. Palance was always going to survive. Always. It was just, you could tell that was in his contract. He was not going to die.
Yeah. I'll throw that out to you two as well. Did you think at any time Palance was in peril?
I thought the film could have ended that way, but ultimately it had the more Hollywood, in inverted commas, ending. I mean, I think, I'm not going to add a great deal to what Smokey just said. I do think that I was pleased that the film ended with a certain degree of dignity and nobility almost, and pride for Carl's character, because I think he was owed that. Because what you've got to remember is, if you go back to the beginning of this film, all of these men have made their stand against the Nazis. So they are on the grander scale. They're all the good guys. That's what you've got to remember.
Yeah.
All these guys, all right, they're checkered, and as we've mentioned earlier, Carl is not necessarily a good guy, but comparatively they are. And I felt that Carl's character was owed that in his death, and he got that, and I thought that was very fitting, and one of the reasons that I gave this film a 7 rather than a 6. So I like the ending. Thought it was really good.
I think it goes on to reinforce the fact that had the Martine Carroll character not been in there, it would have been like this random act of malfeasance by Carl at the end when he pulls the rope and tries to do away with Jack Palance. I think the film would have benefited a lot if Jack Palance had died with Carl at the end, because I think their paths they were doomed characters anyway, and I think it would have been a real third man kind of twist. Like at the end when Alida Valli walks past Joseph Cotton and you feel like no one's really won, but that's the tragedy of, this situation. And I think with Eric and Carl, it would have been beautifully poetic if they died together, having sort of made their peace with the fact that they're both good guys, but they're both very, very different. And then a bomb had just randomly taken them both. And, they've just remembered only by their deeds and not by what they did, if that makes sense at all. Like they'd spent the war cleaning up bombs, but that's their permanent record, and not the fact that Carl was, trying to get off with Martine Carroll, but she chose Jack Palance, because that's just absolutely superficial. And as you say, Ben, they're both inherently good people. It's just that one is slightly more out for himself, but that's because of his upbringing and his background, and not because he's an inherently evil person. There's so much. I think what I was trying to get to, actually, the point I was going to make was that my brain comes up with far more interesting things for this film than the film does. Like when I first saw this, I thought it was going to be one thing, and it turned out to be as far away from that as possible. And then when it got to about a third of the way in, I was thinking, God, I hope it does this, and it didn't. And then when it got to 2/3 of the way, and I was like, what? They've got tension here. Hopefully they play that up, and they don't. And it's like they kind of fluffed it every step of the way. And the reason why I do admire it, and I think it's a lovely film to look at, and I do think the ending is good, but I think it could have been way better. I think it could have been a bit more timeless. So yeah, I think my main issue with it is that I wish I'd written the script, or wish I'd been able to tap Aldrich on the shoulder and gone, let's make it this story.
You're
instead
old enough.
of the one you. Who's talking?
Hey!
Yeah, I think that's a frustrating thing when you watch a film and you're so taken out of it by what it could have been that you don't enjoy it as much. But I love a film where you just go like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm absolutely here for it. I don't care what happens. I'm loving this experience, and for me, I was always hovering over it, thinking, "Oh, I hope they go there instead of there," and they went to the wrong place. Yeah, that's my main issue with it.
Ironically, it's perfectly set up as well, because there's the whole scene between Eric and Margot, which is her actual character name. I don't think we mentioned at all Martine Carroll's name. But there's a whole scene where she talks about what you leave behind and the fact that you would only have her left behind because obviously Eric's work is all destroyed and Carl's is even worse. He's got no legacy whatsoever. So it was already kind of baked in for this finale where both of them don't walk away.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised when you did get the Hollywood ending, especially when you've already got this European sensibility. I was not expecting it to go Hollywood. Yeah, I was expecting Palance to actually bite the bullet as well.
But not only do you get the Hollywood ending, you then get a narrated ending on top of that, which just completely kills it.
Yeah.
It's like let's flatten it, but then let's on it as well. It's really strange. It's horrible.
I do just love the fact how she said when she's talking about the soldier who died before. And she says, all he had left to leave behind was his little dog, Pepe. I just loved how she said that.
Yeah.
And the fact their legacy was some horrific 1950s concrete tower block as well.
Yes. I do like the ending of that, where it kind of shows you the old Berlin, bombed out Berlin, and then shows you the new tower blocks that have been built exactly next to it.
Time marches on, yeah.
Kind of.
I thought Jack Palance had just stood up, to be honest, from that look at that building.
I just looked at that tower block and thought, nothing another British £1,000 couldn't sort out.
Okay, on that, before we tie things up completely, I held back from doing alternate actors earlier on because we were on about Jack Palance and how it might be an interesting casting decision. And the reason being, I thought, just in case we have nothing to talk about at the end, it turns out I was wrong. Ben, alternate casting decisions for Eric. Who would you have gone with?
Well, I've gone through I've got three Hammer alumni that I thought
you're showing off.
All of which would do a decent job. First of all, remain calm, Smokey. But I think Andre Morel would have been decent in the part.
Yeah.
I think Dane Clark would have been nicely cast for this as well. And I also think, and I admit this is slightly further left field, I think Alex Nichol could have done a decent job in that role as well. Certainly he would have played more into the romantic aspect of the role more. And to bring his name up for, I think, at least a second or third time this episode, I think Peter Van Eyck would have been great as Carl, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
He's got the bad guy vibe going all the way through.
And a funny accent.
Yes. It would have gone all Valkyrie. It would have gone all Valkyrie. Yeah. Val Kilmer, yeah. Smokey. Any alternate casting decisions?
Only for Jack Palance, and it's from one end of the spectrum to the other, either Bernard Breslau or Vincent Price.
Vincent Price, because he's the last man on Earth, obviously.
Well, that, but also just have Bernard Breslau just look like big hulking knobhead, big hulking idiot. It was just, I think that would put such a weird twist on it. But I actually, all joking aside, I think Vincent Price could nail that part. I really do, because he's got the stature, he's got the hair, and he's just, I think he'd be absolutely.
Can you imagine Vincent Price peeking over a ledge as he's pulling the rope? He's just, he's
yeah, I really, really can. In 1959, he'd be perfect.
There would be no tension at all. Come on, Vince, blow it up. Instead of, that doesn't.
I'm saying, hey, my choice.
Yeah,
yep. No comebacks. Kings, no comebacks.
Nope. Exactly.
Adam, what would yours have been?
I would have. I think Paul Henreid would have been an interesting choice in for Jack Palance, especially because he has the accent, so he can vaguely fit for any sort of European person. Plus, I think he had that sort of. I think Jack Palance, as well as being incredibly angular looking, also I think he was rather young for this role. I think Paul Henreid would have had that sort of, oh my god, I've seen a war kind of age to his face. And Carl, I, in the same vein, I would like to have seen Tom Conway, I think, as Carl. You know, that would have been
nice.
interesting to see, because he has that caddish sort of air to him anyway. But it would have been nice to see someone as caddish as Tom Conway, or George Sanders, indeed, redeem himself at the end with a noble death.
The dream.
So, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say redeem himself for Blood Orange.
That too. The roar of approval that would have gone up when he blew up. That's for Blood Orange, Conway. What a movie that was.
So there we go. 10 Seconds to Hell. Could have been a 10 out of 10 movie, if not for a couple of missteps. Check it out and let us know what you think. Speaking of getting in contact, we are on the Insta, the Twitter, and the Face book. We post on all of them very regularly, so if you aren't following us on those, do so now. The details are in our show notes. Also, we have received some wonderful 5-star ratings and reviews recently. Thank you to all that have done so. We really, really do appreciate it. Next time, we are back in the company of Bernard Bresslaw, and we go all Jekyll and Hyde before Hammer do Jekyll and Hyde. Thank you all for joining us, and for your continued support, and we look forward to welcoming you all back through the doors, here, at the House of Hammer.